Hey everybody, there's lots of types of annuities out there. So I wanted to review all the major types and kind of talk about the pros and cons and who should be looking at these types of annuities for what reasons.
All
So
right.
first one, variable annuities. The pros, right? Tax deferred growth. I caution people that don't understand taxation that may not be that great, but there are certain circumstances where deferring taxation to a later date might be okay. Not subject to contribution limits. So people that have higher wages or they struggle to contribute to 401ks or just plain old IRAs, Roth accounts, all these kinds of things, they don't have enough room for them to contribute meaningful dollars. So there's no contribution limits on these. Many states protect them from creditors. Credit lawsuit and creditor protection is pretty normal in the annuity and life insurance world, and then exempt from probate as long as you list your beneficiaries. So that's, look, that's the reasons, the pros. You could say market-based growth in there as well. This is the only kind of annuity that has risk. You are investing directly in the stock market. But here's the issue with these variable annuities. First of all, the fees. You can buy mutual funds without the wrapper of the annuity side of it, and you're going to have a lot less fees. So if we're only putting money in there to grow it in the stock market, we shouldn't be doing that. There has to be some other reasons, like tax deferral. Great choice, or not a great choice for consistent withdrawals. Okay, when you have something fluctuating up and down and a layer of fees in there, not a great environment for consistently withdrawing. And then the changes dividends to and capital gains to interest. This is so important, and this is why tax deferral may not be good in your situation. Some people get enamored by it, but long-term capital gains and qualified dividends are taxed at much lower tax rates. Okay, if we change them to interest, then they're taxed at full income tax rates. So we have to be careful about that. You're taking the good side of the stock market. You got growth, that's good, but then the taxation is usually much less when you invest in the stock market. It's tax advantaged, and you're ripping that away. Okay, so you're trading off better taxation for tax deferred. Later, you're going to have to pay full taxation. So who should consider these? Well, look, high income and taxation now. If you're in your prime working years making hundreds and millions of dollars and tax deferral is meaningful because you're paying 30 something percent, and you know later in life you're not going to be paying that high of taxation, so you're okay paying 20s later. Great, I get it. That makes sense. Typically, you're going to be younger and you're also going to have a long time before you're going to retire to use these variable annuities for those reasons. Okay, so next one. Registered indexed linked annuities. So these are actually much newer and they're starting to take over the variable annuity world. They stole this from the fixed indexed annuity world. They basically are saying that we're going to cap your upside and cap your downside so you can define your risk. So this is a variable annuity that does allow loss, okay? But it limits your exposure to that risk. It limits your exposure to losses. Okay, it's not subject to contribution limits as well. It's tax deferred as well, exempt from probate as well, and protects from creditor and lawsuits as well. So this is basically a variable annuity that's going to cap the up and downside. Okay, so the cons, well, we're limiting our gains. We have a potential for loss, and we got to watch out for a layer of fees in there. Okay, not all annuities have fees, but variables absolutely unequivocally have lots of fees, and they're hidden in the mutual funds quite often. These, you're typically going to have advisory fees on these types of things. So you now have a portfolio that's limiting your gains and limiting your losses, but then also has a layer of fees. So if you're limited to 10% up and you have a 1% fee, then you're really limited to 9% up. And you have a 10% cap on the loss, well, you're really going to lose 11%. It shifts that paradigm there, and you got to be careful. All right. So you got that potential for loss, you got those fees, and not great for consistent withdrawals because you're still exposed to losses. and changes those dividends and capital gains of the stock market into interest. So it hurts you on taxes. Well, the only differentiating point of this from a variable annuity is that desire to define risk. You're willing to take lower returns if you can define your risk. Okay, so not a huge amount of reasons, but these are getting more and more popular because they're getting sold as a safe investment. And I want you to be careful about that. That's not necessarily what these are. They're just a risk-based investment that limits the amount you can earn. Next one, income annuities. Because interest rates are currently higher, these are actually intriguing right now. Whether it's the variable annuities or the fixed versions are usually better. They lock in much higher returns and interest rates because the payout rates are able to be higher in the fixed side. But just looking at the world of annuities that are built to pay you income, as a category, the pros are, well, they're really the only investment you have out there that will provide guaranteed income. There's nothing else out there. CDs pay interest for a certain period of time and then it's gone, right? Dividends, well, they can change those. Rental properties, they can stop paying rent. There is no other source of guaranteed income other than your Social Security, a pension, which is an income annuity, and these income annuities that are out there. Deferred income annuities will guarantee growth in deferral, so I don't need it. I'm going to invest it now, looking for an income later in life. Then they guarantee you that payment for life. And most of those will double that income if you're in a long-term care facility. So a nice boost of income. Now, yes, there's lots of fine print on those, and they'll do it for up to 5 years. And you got to have some of your own cash value left and things like that. But it's still a benefit. If used properly, you might be able to use that to your advantage. And then you're locking in higher interest rates for life. That's what's cool because look, the last 20 plus years, we've thought 3% was a good interest rate, and now we're looking at 6% as a good interest rate, double. If we can lock that in, then typically we're going to be pretty good for the rest of our life. A lot of people think that way. A lot of people think we can't go much higher than we are because things start breaking. And now, instead of a CD only locked in for a year or a MIGA that we'll talk about next locked in for 5, 7, or 10 years, then now we're really locking in this higher interest rate for life because the contract says what the payout rate is. And they're building these contracts based on how they can invest the money today. So you're effectively locking in these higher payout rates for the rest of your life. And that's a huge, enormous advantage. There's no other way to do that. The bad side of the income annuities out there, well, lock in low interest rates. If you did one 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you locked in lower payout rates, lower interest rates. And that means you're locked into that. And if you've already triggered income, in most cases, some are an exception, but most cases, it's not worth switching now. But if you have not triggered income, you really do need to look at refinancing that, at upgrading that, because a lot of these new ones will pay a bonus to get you out of the old one. No increase for inflation. Look, there are some companies out there that will pay an increasing amount based on inflation, but you start out way lower than everybody else. And I haven't really seen one that's been that much worthwhile. I mean, I've seen payout rates of 8% guaranteed on the money. And if you take the inflation, then you start at 4. Well, your cross even points well into your 80s. It's not something that most people are going to be attracted to if they actually see and understand the numbers. So for the most part, the income is flat and stagnant, and it doesn't increase for inflation. Watch out for fees. Okay, if you don't know you're paying the fees and you have an income annuity that you're never going to trigger income, then that's kind of not worth paying the fees for. Variable annuities, they'll increase the fees in there to pay for the income rider, whereas the fixed side, you'll have a built-in fee. There are a few out there that don't have fees, but the reality is they pay out way less. It's still worth paying the fee. And then surrender charges. It's not like you can just change your mind the next day. All of these annuities are going to have some form of surrender charges, and it's logical. These insurance companies have to invest the money so they can follow through on their promises. If you just pick the money up and leave the next day, it hurts them. They can't follow through with the promises if they know you can just pick it up and leave the next day. So who should consider these? Well, I look at this in a couple of categories. If you don't have enough income to pay the bills and you have heirs that you care about what you give to, you want to have enough income, enough guaranteed income to pay your base living requirements. Keep the shelter over your head, keep yourself fed. You need to have a base that pays those bills. Okay, so when you have heirs that you care about leaving money to, you stop there. Okay, if you have Social Security of $2,000 a month and you got bills of $4,000 a month, you need to come up with an extra $2,000 a month, and these can do that. Now, if you don't really care about how much your heirs get, I'm okay using these to fill up the I need to pays and the I want to pays right now. Because again, interest rates are higher. You're locking in these higher rates. You're locking in that security of that income coming in. So not enough guaranteed income to pay the bills and fund if you don't have heirs. That's the qualification for these. So when I look at people's situations, everybody's different. And the vast majority of people, I don't use these income annuities, but I'm starting to see more and more uses for them right now because these interest rates are so much higher and the payout rates are so much better that I've opened up kind of that second category of going above the base bills and including enjoyment when we don't care about how much our heirs get, right? Because we're taking a lump sum of money, we're handing it to an insurance company and asking them to pay us a payment for the rest of our life. So you have to accept that that money is pretty much gone. If you prematurely pass away, some of it will be left and go to your heirs. But the reality is it's not an efficient wealth transfer vehicle. It's an efficient pay for my retirement vehicle. So we can't look at it as a great way to pass it to heirs. So if you do have heirs that you care about, then stop at just paying the base living expenses. If you don't have heirs that you care about leaving money to, then you can increase that guaranteed income to include enjoyment in retirement. Then there's those fixed annuities, those MYGAs, multi-year guarantee annuities, by far the most popular annuity for the last couple of years, and honestly, the most popular safe investment period for the last couple of years because of these higher interest rates. So the big advantage, well, these are CDs basically. They're CDs from an insurance company. Lock in these higher fixed rates. And the great thing about these, how they differentiate from CDs, is they typically do the 5, 7, or 10-year guarantees. CDs really only do 1 year, and some play games and do 18 months. You go beyond that, they're all callable. These fixed annuities are not callable. These MYGAs are not callable. You're able to lock in these higher interest rates. They have no fees. People that don't know about these say, oh, that's impossible. Nope, that's literally true. There should be no fees in these. And the reason that you can lock it in for a longer period of time is because they give you access to the money. It's user-friendly. They expect you to pull money out along the way. It's okay to. You're meant to use these investments, okay? This is also tax-deferred and compound by default. Now, again, there's always some exceptions to that rule, but these are all that tax-deferred, and the compound growth is daily. Exempt from probate, many states, creditor and lawsuit protected, all those wonderful things that all annuities have. But the reality is these are CDs from insurance companies. That's all they are. The cons, well, no inflation protection. I always tell people don't rely solely on fixed rates because if interest rates raise to 10% and you're stuck at 6%, you're falling behind inflation. So I'm okay with some of these higher interest rates, betting that we won't see higher interest rates than 6%. But the reality is you don't want to have all your safe investments stuck at 6%. So diversify. You need to have other safe investments as well. Then there's the surrender charges, which again make this a difficult proposition. Do I lock in for 10 years? This is the highest interest rates we've seen in 20 years. Highest interest rates we've seen in 20 years. It feels good. I locked in some at 6% for 10 years. I personally did. That's just the reality of it. I look at this and say, well, some of my money, I'm okay with that. And maybe some of my money at 7 years and 5 years and so forth and so on. So you want to scatter the terms on this. So that way you don't have it all expire in 1 year. So who should consider these? Well, if you're looking for locking in the highest fixed rates out there, that's what these are for. That's what they do. And they allow you to use it along the way. And that's why they make these this way. They're very user-friendly. People get scared of that word annuity, and these are the simplest of all simple. They're CDs, but they give you access to 10% of that money every year. And then this is a great replacement. And why this has been the most popular safe investment the last couple of years, because everybody's getting out of their bonds for obvious reasons. Bonds are a return-free risk. That's really all they are. And there's very logical reasons bonds have not performed for the last 20 years. And if you don't believe me, just pull up your bond mutual fund and look at the 10, 15, 20-year performance of that bond mutual fund. And you'll say, oh, Lord, what happened? Because every bond mutual fund has done terrible for the last 10 years. Then, fixed indexed annuities, a variation of a fixed annuity. Again, still no risk in these. Market-based growth without the potential of loss, right? So this has no risk of loss, but yet we're tied to the stock market on how we're going to earn. So we talked about the RILA, the registered index link. They're capping how much you earn and they cap how much you lose. In this case, you're capping how much you lose, which is zero. Floor is zero, you can't lose. And when the stock market goes up, you participate in those gains. Changing between different indices and a fixed rate annually, meaning you get to change how you earn interest every year. They give you multiple different indices and they give you a fixed interest rate. You can just sit back and earn a fixed interest rate if you don't like where the stock market's going. There should be no fees in these. Okay, and again, I said no fees, I mean no fees. There's nobody actually pulling a fee out of your money. 10% annual access, many states, lawsuit and creditor protected, tax deferred compound growth, and exempt from probate. So what's the bad side of these? Well, most companies can change rates annually. Not all of them. There's a couple of them out there. There's a handful of them out there that are guaranteeing their interest rates for the whole term, which is the only ones I'll use these days, because every one of those companies that changes their interest rates, they change them downward. They just do. It's the nature of their business. So I try to lock those in, and that's what you should be looking for out there. Surrender charges. Well, again, they have to invest the money so they can pay you interest. So you have to choose, they're typically going to be 10-year type contracts. They're guaranteeing paying you interest for 10 years. They have to invest it. They're going to give you access to the money along the way. So as long as you play within the rules, these can be fantastic, safe investments. And they're a good diversification to help keep up with inflation as well. And then the other thing to watch out for, as we've learned over the years, they keep creating these stock indices. Morgan Stanley will come up with one, and S&P comes up with one, and this one, and that one, and this one, and that. They keep coming up with these indices. The insurance company doesn't control the indices, but they're creating these low volatility indices. And we have to understand that when there's a volatility control as tight as 5%, you should never expect that index to move very much. Okay? They stretch it out to 10, 15%, and now we've got the ability to grow. So be careful about some of these stock indices that are very tightly controlled on how they move. Now, you can still make money on those low volatility indices, and they've had good years, but the reality is it dampens the ability to grow. So the indices that you have a choice from, you do have to have an advisor that understands those indices and allocates you properly as well. All right, I hope that was a good review of all the different annuity types that are out there. I've never actually laid them all out in one little mini class like this. There's lots to talk about in every single one. I just wanted a good overview of all of them out there. All right, if I can help in any way, yourinvestmentcounselor.com. You can schedule 30-minute free meet and greets with me or any other kind of appointment for that matter. FPFEAZ.org is our nonprofit organization. We run all of our full classes through that platform. They are live over Zoom 3-4 times a month on different topics every month. And then obviously give us a call anytime if we can help out. If you haven't visited our full YouTube channel, we've got tons of education on here, and I keep adding every single week. I add new videos. So like, subscribe, share it all, do all those wonderful things, and let me know if I can help at any time. Thanks again. We'll see you next week.